Hi there, Sapora here, Marine Biology. We're doing our species list this week, and I have mixed up a couple of species lists from the original set to kind of condense this into one awesome species list covering the Cnidaria, or Cnidarian phylum of animals. So it's right here. Here's the assignment, and then you're going to fill out this blank species list with the species on it. There's 6 this week. And we're going to start with the phylum notes, right? The phylum notes are the notes about the larger group that these things belong to. Right underneath the kingdom, in this case the animal kingdom, there's phylum. And phylum is a different classification. Beneath that, there's different phylums of animals. There's anywhere from 36 to 9, depending on how you count it, different phylums of animals. And you may be familiar with some of them. Vertebrate is one that we belong to, or chordate. There are mollusks. There are arthropods, which include insects and crustaceans. That's the largest phylum of animals. There's 3 different phylums of worms and sponges. And then Cnidaria is another phylum of animals. And what makes a cnidarian? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so it's spelled with the C, but it's pronounced Cnidarian. Cnidarian, as you see right here. And these are animals. Almost all of these are marine, and all of them are aquatic. They consist of corals, jellyfish, anemones, and these weird little things called hydroids right over here. You'll see those. And so in looking at these, well, yeah, all corals are cnidarians. Again, all jellyfish and all anemones. And there's some similarities between them. The main thing that these guys have all in common, a unique feature, is cnidocysts. These cnidocysts, or cnidocytes, are specialized stinging cells for capturing prey. So they shoot out a little tiny dart. A cnidocyst, I believe, is the dart from the cnidocyte. And it paralyzes, stings, and then they use their tentacles to grab and capture these things. So on the ends of these tentacles, they shoot out pew, 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 pew. These little arrows, and knock out, paralyze, sting, and then they wrap up, capture, and pull in their prey, and they eat it. It's anything from plankton to small fish, that they eat. They have a simple body plan, so they just have an inner and an outer epithelium. Our epithelium is our skin, and then we have several inner layers. We have several layers of skin as well. And then these guys just have 2 layers with a soft, squishy middle called a mesoderm. That runs in between them there, and they're radial. They have a radial symmetry, meaning a circular symmetry to them, so they don't have a right or a left, much like a wheel does. They can have a top and a bottom, but there's no right or left to them. They're radial, circular, and they have a single orifice body cavity. So basically what goes into the stomach sac, and then they digest it, and then they spit it back out. So their mouth and their butt are the same thing. And they have a nerve net, so they have nerves kind of around in this net-like feature, but they're not, all those nerves don't go back and communicate to kind of one central processing station or a brain. They don't have that. They just have nerves that do different things. Can sense light, can sense differences in temperature and salinity, and those types of things about their environment, and then they react based on the input they get with those. And there's about 10,000 species worldwide, probably more. We just haven't classified them all because there's a lot of weird ones that just float around in the water we haven't even probably seen yet. So here's a look. There are 2 basic, you don't have to write any of this down, but there are 2 basic body plans to the cnidarian. There is the polyp, which is fixed to something, right? So a coral or an anemone, kind of anchored to a rock, and then they're up here feeding off of that. Or the medusa, which is just kind of free floating in the water and with the tentacles hanging down. Many have a larval medusa stage, so anemones and corals will spawn, and then they'll have a little larvae that form that are like little medusas that'll float through the water feeding until they land on a substrate once they grow a bit, and then they turn into the polyp stage. Jellyfish are sort of an enlarged larva then, if you think about it, and they probably evolved that way as a larval stage that just never went to the polyp stage because there was food available, and they stayed there, and that's where that lineage comes from as well. Okay, and here you can see the polyp stage and kind of how they're built, and again, the mouth takes in food, and then they digest it down in here, And then once they're digesting and sucking up all the nutrients from that, they then spit out the food as well. They have little perforations where they suck in water. So if you're pushed down on an anemone and seen them squirt out, that's how they do it. They just fill up their bodies with water, and they can inflate or they can deflate. Inflate and deflate. So that's one way that they work. And then they have these little glands inside of them that, again, help them kind of digest food as it goes down. Okay, cool beans. We have 6 on the list today. We got 3 anemones and 3 others with us today. The first 3 anemones I chose them based on their genuses. So we've got different representatives of the 3 larger genuses. There's a few more. There's quite a few anemones here in the Pacific Northwest coast, along the Oregon coast. Hedging to bet there's probably over 30 different species of anemone here. That's a guess, but I think it's pretty ballparky. The first one we have is Metridium farcimen, or the giant plumose anemone. These are long, and they got all kinds of little tiny microfilaments, I would call them, on the ends of them, kind of like, almost looks like cauliflower. They feed on plankton and other small things that are floating through the water, and they're pretty large. They can come out of the sand and sediment. They'll attach to rocks as well. Usually you have to be down diving or snorkeling to find these things. They're a little bit deeper in the water. It says subtidal, down to 300 meters, so down to over 1,000 feet in the water, which is pretty deep. These guys are awesome. And interesting fact, their Latin name, when looked up, translates to mother sausage. These are the mother of all sausages. I'm fine if you just want to call them mother sausage and not giant plumose anemone, but we do need to learn the scientific name. So let's say it together. The genus is Metridium, and the species is farcimen. So let's say it together. Metridium farcimen. There you go. Mother sausage, giant plumose anemone. Looks like my internet's down. Let's keep going. Okay, the painted anemone is going to be the next one. This one here is known for its modeling around the base of it. So around the actual outside structure base, it can be real copper color with red spots. It can be white, it can be green. It has a lot of variation, but it looks like someone speckled paint all over it. The tentacles are sort of candy cane looking, pink and white stripes. And these guys can pack a pretty good punch with their sting. So urticenas are not one you want to just reach out and touch. Most of the time you can touch them with their hands because their hands are callous and the skin is really thick. But if you were to touch it with like the underside of your arm here, sensitive skin, it would probably sting you and you can maybe feel it. Some people are more reactive to others, although most people don't really feel these anemone stings or most anemone stings. Okay, anyway, the colors vary widely, so just take a look at the structure with those long tentacles. It's very different from the Metridium. These feed on mussels and clams and crabs and things that get in their way. They're just below the low tide line. You can see them at really low tides out there, commonly seen snorkeling or diving here. And the scientific name for the painted anemone is Urticina, and the species Crassicornis. So it's Urticina crassicornis. There you go. Urtica or Urticina refers to the plant genus for stinging nettles. So these are kind of named after a plant counterpart, I would say. There we go. Okay, Urticina crassicornis, the painted anemone, and giant plumose or mother sausage, Metridium farcimen. Awesome looking guys here. Okay, next up. Hi guys, we have some guests in the house over here. Wave nerds. Wait. There they are. Okay, anyway, back to my video here. Okay, the next two, green surf anemone. This is one that is common in our tide pools. It's green. That's how you can identify it. Okay. This one here, the reason why it's green, animals don't actually make green pigments. Well, that's not true, actually. Mammals don't, I guess. Frogs do. I take that back. These guys don't make their own green pigments. Something lives inside of them that does, and those are symbiotic algae that live just underneath their epidermal skin layer, I guess you would say. And the algae do photosynthesis, and they produce glucose, and the anemone gets some of that food, and then the algae gets a stingy buddy to live inside of, so they're protected from grazers and predators and things like that that might eat them. These guys are in tide pools, so they like to be in areas where there's light, That's because they do photosynthesis a little bit, and they feed on all kinds of things. Anything that washes through the tide pools. So things get thrashed around in there when waves come through, and they just kind of live in that wave zone, and then they kind of grab things as they sail by. Barnacles, mussels, sea urchins, small fish, anything they will grab a hold of and eat. And down to about 30 meters, so not the deepest, again, because they require light for that symbiotic algae. A cool scientific name, this is one you should learn, so that when you're hanging out with your friends, you will see these, you can bust out a big, long scientific name and sound smart. Okay, genus is Anthopleura. Again, Anthopleura. And the species name is Xanthogrammica. Xanthogrammica. So, species Anthopleura. Sorry, genus Anthopleura, species Xanthogrammica. Remember when you're writing these to capitalize the genus but keep the species lowercase? That's one of the rules. And we put them in italics and underline them as well. Or one or the other, do both. Okay, next up is a cnidarian. This one is a colonial polyp, meaning it's made up of thousands of tiny little individual cnidarians making up the whole structure itself. So this itself is not an organism. It is multiple organisms making up a larger structural-looking organism itself. Kind of cool how this works. So there's a bunch of little polyps on here, little circular guys that are all feeding, kind of like a coral reef. And they have a soft body that they make up. It sits and filter feeds. Look at this. It's just a built-in filter. It looks like an air filter to a car or something like that. And catches plankton as it gets fed through it. In our area, these are right off of the boat area. In Netarts Bay, you can find these guys as well. They're really cool and beautiful looking. Okay. Orange sea panda, and the genus name is Tillosarcus. The P is silent, so it's Tillosarcus. And the species name is Gurnii. That's right. Tillosarcus gurnii. Whoop, whoop. Okay, so we got Anthopleura, Xanthogrammica, and then we've got Tillosarcus gurnii. How fun is that? Next up, last two here. Okay, two of our jellyfish, although one is not a jellyfish. It's actually a hydroid. So that group, this is a colonial hydroid. So it's a bunch of little organisms making up the whole structure, again, kind of like the sea pen. And these float along the surface of the water. They make this kind of protein little sail that catches and blows, and they float around by the thousands. They wash up on the beach as these little tiny purple discs that turn kind of papery and slimy, and they make up like an entire line up the beach when they fully wash. Scientific name is an easy one to remember. It's Valella valella. Valella, 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 Valella. So that's an easy one to remember. You can just walk down the beach kicking them, yelling Valella, Valella for hours on end. Last one. This is Brock Manderson's personal favorite. This is the moon jelly. The moon jelly. I prefer to pronounce it moon jelly. Just because it sounds cool when you say it that way. Okay. Can get hubcap big to smaller. Very jelly-like, kind of like gelatin. They got the 4 little crescent discs inside of them. Those are their reproductive gonads, where they release their stuff into the water. And they will come around here in the spring. These are a plankton. Jellyfish are a plankton. We'll learn about this soon. Plankton are organisms that float on the water surface and are at the mercy of the current, so they can't actively swim the opposite direction. They can move around in it, but they're going where the current goes. That's what plankton is. Jellyfish are the largest type of plankton there really is out there. And these guys are plankton. So they wash around here in the spring. They follow the currents, and that's when they end up here. They're a big food source for lots of things. They're a big food source for different types of fish, including blue rockfish and sea turtles as well. One of the reasons why plastic bags are so bad is they end up in the water and they look like a jellyfish. Turtles eat them. They can sting, so you don't want to grab a live one. And apparently they can be frozen in ice and thawed out and still be living. That's pretty cool. Okay, let's talk about this one. Scientific name, Aurelia labiata. So genus is Aurelia, and the species is labiata. Aurelia after the moon. You can figure out the rest on your own. Boom! Which one's this? Let's do a quick review. This one right here. Modeling on the outside, Nice big tentacles, candy striped. This would be Urticina crassicornis, the painted anemone. This one here, green in tide pools, clusters together, likes light. This would be Anthopleura, xanthogrammica. Okay, large sausagey looking thing with the fine tentacles, really fine. It can be all white, so don't let the color fool you. Look at those fine tentacles. And this would be the mother sausage, or Metridium farcimum. Large jellyfish, the 4 crescents in it, Aurelia labiata, the moon jelly. And the sea pen. And it occurs, let's say grows, because it's not a, well, I mean, it grows. But not like a plant would, I guess. It occurs in substrates where there's currents and things like that. Likes to suck into the sand. Can be around rocks, but is attached to the sand. This is the Tylosarcus gurnii, the sea pen. And lastly, billions of them on beaches, wash up. That's Valella, 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 Valella. All right, we're going to look at these in lab this week, and that's about it. Cnidarian's out.